so much for the invitation and helping to make this happen. It's always been a goal to bring this to Texas, and I love the idea that it's here in Galveston. Some of the specimens came from not so far from here. And also I just wanted to give another shout out as far as thanks, Victor and Lily. Our children helped a lot with this aurora too. So it takes a village to build a monumental artwork like this. So this piece is called Collapse. It's a response to the 2010 Deepwater Horizon oil spill, the largest oil spill as far as we know in human history. Even though it's 15 years later, we're still trying to understand the impacts of that spill. Initially, what was happening in 2000, the spill started in April of 2010 and lasted almost 3 months. 134 million gallons of oil, maybe more. There's kind of a conflict between papers, but the fate of that oil still today isn't that well understood. And so initially, like a team of other scientists, and I'm an artist and a biologist, other biologists were very concerned about what happens when you put that much oil into one place like the Gulf of Mexico, which is such an amazing, resilient nursery, biodiverse ecosystem, and what kind of impact that may have. And specifically, like not only that oil, but when you're using these things called chemical dispersants, which oil naturally floats and can be captured. But if you use chemical dispersants, it breaks the oil up into fatty little molecules and they sink. And when they sink at 3,000, 5,000 feet, they're virtually impossible to clean up. So what happens when half that oil, which is the estimate, ended up in the Gulf food chain? So this, in a sense, is on one hand, is a response to that. It's also supposed to be a memorial to the 11 folks that lost their lives on that rig, but also the billions of creatures that were impacted, the billions of other individual lives that were taken from that one incident that lasted for so long. So initially, we started to speculate. So as scientists, we can't really speculate the same way that we can as artists, but we felt there would be an impact from that much oil going into one place. And we estimated there would be extinctions or at least disappearances or declines. And so we put together this as a kind of loosely inspired by the food chain, the trophic pyramid. So when you start to see down here, you've got some of the little creatures that decompose and produce and kind of set up the basis of the food chain, and then it amplifies. And as it amplifies, you'll notice there are more missing jars because that was us speculating. And so a few years later, I joined a team at LSU as a postdoc, and that's specifically what we were looking at, missing endemic Gulf of Mexico fishes. And we were right. There are several that disappeared as a result, or we think haven't been reported since that spill. That's a better way of looking at it. But we are looking still. And this piece was first created beginning in 2010. A lot of these were collected during the spill, or this is after. This is oil that was collected as part of a court case in 2012 because there was still oil floating around like in the marshlands openly. There are lots and lots of different diversity. There are some oil-stained specimens. You'll see like the shrimp over here. Some of these were showing up at markets in New Orleans with oil staining on them a year after the spill. So a lot of these specimens came from not just me collecting one with my 5-gallon bucket while I was trying to rescue birds, and I never rescued a single bird, but I found lots of interesting dead things, which I stuck in jars, but also working with a whole team. So the other biologists, and then putting the word out. So those were sent from a unanimous shrimper who signed a non-disclosure agreement, but shipped them to my gallery in New York. And so they would get these coolers from the Gulf and be like, Brandon, somebody else sent you a dead thing in a cooler, come get it. And then the gallery was very brave to show this kind of work because it's, it doesn't look like the most sellable artwork for one thing, and it's very different than what most people think of as visual art. But so Feldman Gallery really supported that the first time around in 2012, and it had enough of an impact that we got a lot of text came out, a lot of articles came out about the oil spill again. So it kind of ignited this interest in New York City about the oil spill again, to the point that it rippled out and Senator Bill Nelson came to see the project, who then was one of the leading senators who went for the BP liability court case. So we knew he was coming, so we got to prepare like a massive dossier of scientific artifacts to give his team. So I like to think that in a way, art like this can have a ripple effect and has continued. It's been traveling since 2012. It's been all over the country. And it's amazing that it's finally back in one of the Gulf states. So showing it in Louisiana, showing it in Texas, showing it in Galveston, especially because of, look at the rigs right there. The goal is not to point fingers at anybody, but just hopefully to use this piece as a way to have conversation about the complexity of where we want to be in the future. This is 15 years after that spill. Where do we want to be in 15 years from now? And try to understand how complex and amazing the life in the Gulf of Mexico is. The biodiversity is incredible. This is like less than 2.7% of the known biodiversity. So if we had another like 97 of these, Sasha, you want to make another 97 of these? We can do this. Yeah, let's do that next. That's closer to just what we know. So just imagine what we don't know. And the deeper we get, the more we just find more and more life and how much more interesting and how there's all this mystery down there. And all of it needs to be studied, understood, and protected, right? It's a natural resource for not us now, but for future generations, for years, for centuries to come. And those ecosystems are unique. And the more we learn about them, the more hopefully we can start to care about them and make sure that they're there in the future. So thank you all. Okay. So when you go to the bathroom, everybody needs to go to the bathroom while they're here. You're going to find there are wanted posters in the bathroom. And literally that was the first wave when I did the postdoc at LSU. We identified, so they're things called endemic species. Endemic means like something that's found one place and nowhere else in the world. So there are roughly about 87 endemic species in the Gulf of Mexico. We just said 88 now because there's this great little shark that's only been found once in the Gulf. But looking at reports of those records, we identified 14 species that had not been reported since Deepwater Horizon. And so I went to the Smithsonian and I x-rayed some of their preserved specimens and I made these. And the idea is working with not just other scientists, but shrimpers and fisher folk. I love the idea that these could be on the boats when we're out looking for the missing species. So they're really flags of missing species. And those little posters, there were like, I don't know how many hundreds or thousand that went all over the Gulf Coast. And every once in a while, I'll still see one like in a marina that I put there like 10 years ago, and it's cool. So I mean, there's tons tons of obstacles. One, I mean, my studio at the time was based in Manhattan. So imagine like, setting up a laboratory in the middle of Midtown Manhattan and doing it, but we kind of did it. So we figured out a way to do it. And then the first time I'd never installed it on a pedestal. So we literally tested it by putting it on the floor and climbing it. So that was a little interesting. And then, so just figuring out the physics of how it could work. And then the first time there was no scaffolding, which was a nightmare. That first and last time there was no scaffolding, so that was tricky. And then also the preservative, making sure that I could use something that keeps them from decomposing without being flammable or toxic.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Dennis. So as he said, I'm the Gulf Restoration Education and Outreach Manager, and I work at National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. I'm embedded in Flower Garden Bank's National Marine Sanctuary. If you haven't heard of it, please look it up. It's amazing. And we have our superintendent here, Michelle. So I work on the restoration of deep coral habitats in the Gulf that were injured by the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. That work is being led by NOAA and the Department of the Interior. You can learn more about it at the signage right behind you there. Voila. And over at our booth, which is in the front room over here, we have lots of great information to share, also lots of giveaways, really cool posters, stickers, etc. So a lot of the work that we do in the education and outreach component of the restoration work is actually being able to work with a lot of great artists and professional educators and be able to support their work through the foundation, the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation grants that are from the NOAA Restoration Center. And those funds actually come from the BP oil spill settlement from 2016. So it's really incredible to take that work and be able to have local artists in these communities that were impacted by the oil spill to be able to, communicate all of the work that we're doing for restoration into the communities that were impacted. So really excited to be able to. Thank you.